Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, in this video we're going over the new neutral and elemental reveals. Make sure to check out our previous video about the blog post that has already gone live, because there I talk about trinkets coming back, the colors on the cards. I'm not going to repeat too much of what I talked about in that video. This card was also in there, so just a little cool buff for Tavern spell buffing strategy. Again, I talk about it in the previous videos, so I'm not going to go too in depth about that. Humongous, same thing there. It's a Divine Shield minion. That means you can keep it on your board. Its effect is not persistent, so if you, at least, as far as I can tell, so it shouldn't stay after you sell it, which means you have to keep it, but that's nice. It's a Divine Shield minion, so very good for the Tavern spell buffing strategy that we talked about in the previous video. Then we have Tauren Spirit Walker. It's a tier 4 card. It's a 6/5. That's an okay stat line. You can pick that up and you don't really feel bad about the tempo wise. The text is you cast one spell each turn twice. That's really nice. You can get a lot of tempo with this if you already have even just like a moderate tempo buff, like +8/+8, the taunt spell. If you cast that and you get 16/16 instead, that's a whole lot of tempo. And that's only single target. You can also have AoE buffs. You can already have some enhancements for your tavern spells by this point. You may have played some botanists, or you might have a humongous in the same shop, and all of a sudden this is even more tempo. So seems like a really fun pickup. If you can pair it with a spell on the very same turn, that'd be great. The golden version says cast one spell each turn 3 times. I really like that, because when you're playing this tavern spell buffing strategy, you're going to have a specific spell that you really like and you want to have that cast multiple times. So the fact that it doesn't just enhance 2 spells, but the golden version just says, no, if you have a spell, you just cast it 3 times, the same spell. That means that if you have something like the Azurite Empowerment that buffs your whole board, and you already have a ton of Tavern spell buffs, now you get, maybe one of the best, if not the premier Tavern buff, because it buffs your whole board and it's baseline already 4/4, you get that 3 times. So that's a whole lot of tempo. So yeah, really big fan of the golden version being 3 times instead of spreading it out over multiple spells. Vorkai Guardian. Start of combat, if you have no minions with Divine Shield, give adjacent minions Divine Shield. My initial thought was, oh, that's kind of good for the spell buffing strategy, but then I looked at Humongous, and Humongous has a Divine Shield, so it doesn't necessarily go too well there, but it's a really nice tech card for the endgame. Think about it this way: when you're playing almost any composition, you're going to have a cycle slot. That's the minion that you're comfortable selling. That's where you play your rodeo performer if you want to discover some spells. That's where you cycle any battle cry, really. A lot of the time you then go into combat and your 7th minion is a dud. It's just something you ended on, and you're quite a bit weaker. So if you play a composition and you don't actually have a Divine Shield minion on your board yet, this is essentially a selfless hero that you can target, which is really cool. You can say, okay, these 2 will get Divine Shield, and that's nice. It seems like a really cool minion to pick up for the late game. A nice little tech card to end your board with, and now suddenly you're quite a bit stronger because you have 2 Divine Shields that you can target, as opposed to Selfless Hero. Let's say the golden version giving 2 shields at random. Then we have the Nightmare Party Guest. Battlecry and Death Red all get a misplaced T-set. That is a nice amount of tempo. If you triple into this and you have some types on your board, suddenly you're getting +3/+3, and then when this thing dies, you get another 3/3. You'll notice that it's also an all type, so it will not take the slot of any type. You'll always have an additional type if you play this. Really cool. You can module it, you can reborn it, you can use elemental buffs on this, you can use pirate buffs on this. So, let's say the Primordium or the Balladist. Those are, it's just really nice if something has an alt type. The effect will probably fall off at some point, but then again, if you're playing Tavern buffing, all of a sudden the +3/+3 is no longer just +3/+3. So, oh wow, you could combo this with, you could just have a Golden Titus and a Golden Party Guest, and all of a sudden you're getting 6 T-sets. And if the buffs are enhanced and you're getting quite a bit more than 3/3, that's already kind of crazy, huh? All right, that's fun. I think the only difficult thing to combine those 2 concepts with Party Guest and Tavern spell buffing is that, from what I've seen, a lot of the Tavern spell buffing is neutral stuff, and if you're getting a lot of the T-sets, you're going to want to have types on your board. But there's probably a way to do this, right? We've seen that there's some trinkets that enhance it, and you can cycle botanists. You don't have to keep them on your board, so you don't really care if they're neutral. So yeah, this seems like a cool thing to explore. I'm definitely interested in having something like Golden Titus and the Golden Party Guest just generate a handful of T-sets every combat. And even if you don't have it, you could still run this with Bran and get 2 T-sets, and that's still a good way to generate spells. So even if you're not playing super Menagerie oriented, if you have a few types on your board, it's still nice to get those spells. So yeah, interesting card to say the least. It'll be very, very fun to experiment with this. Then we have Nala going to tier 5. Wow. Okay. I see some synergy all of a sudden. Yeah, we have a tier 5 Nala with a bunch of Menagerie jugs in your hand. The only tricky part is like you don't have room for a Titus if you're playing Nala. I mean, maybe you do with this strategy, but that would be crazy, man. You have a golden Nala on your board and you get a bunch of jugs every turn. Wow. Yeah, Nala on 5 is pretty crazy. I am looking very forward to this. It looks like they really want Menagerie to be stronger because we've had honestly a really weak season of Menagerie. I think I can probably count the times I've played Nala on one hand, which is not normal for me. I generally play quite a bit of Menagerie. It's fun, it's flexible, but we've just come off a season where it was just so strong to commit into, say, demons or to play Ascendant and just play elementals. So I like this. I like that they're really pushing Menagerie because it's come off a really weak season. Then we have the removed cards. Jug, Mithrax, Chimera, and Tour Group are going. That makes sense. We were just talking about lots of Menagerie support being added. There needs to be some space for that, so you have to remove a lot of cards to fit those new cards, and that just makes a lot of sense. This was the old Menagerie package. The new Menagerie package is in town. Move over, guys. We're gonna see a lot more play around the party guest, Nala, and stuff, so, you know, it's also possible that, you know, leaving Tour Group in, it's just too strong. You have just too many Menagerie options, so makes complete sense that these are going. And then we have some removed spells. These also makes sense when we think about it. At least 2 of them I can definitely see being highly illegal with all the stuff we're seeing, all the support. We have a lot of effects that buff the number of the spell, right? So from, you know, give 1 extra damage or 1 extra health. And when you have something like Catch, that can ramp up really quickly. If you say Catch now gives you a lot of health and a lot of damage and you just swap, that can, you know, that just is way too strong. Echoing Roar, I assume, is the same thing where it gives 2/2, but if you improve it, all of a sudden the Roar can give 5/5 or 7/7 or 10/10. Drakari, Engineer, pop, that, you know, highly illegal stuff, so I can see that being removed. Alliance Flag and Light, it could be that they just needed some space, or that the cheap buff is also just too good. Although we still have the extra health from the taunt, for instance. So I'm not entirely sure if that then is completely broken as well, if it's too cheap. So that makes me think that maybe they value taunting as a downside, and, you know, now at least if you want to have a cheap way to buff something, you at least have to taunt it. Not entirely sure on that, but likely it's going to be related to how easy it is to buff the spells. And then we have Fandrel's Fortune going. That's possibly related to some choose 1 cards rotating out, maybe, because I don't immediately see a problem with Fandrel, other than, again, maybe they need some space for new stuff they're adding. But what I would assume is that they're going to change some kind of thing with the choose 1 pool, and now it feels weird to have a Fandrel, so it's just better to have it go. That's my prediction. And we got some new trinkets. So we're going to start off with the lesser ones. The Worn Treasure map. In 2 turns, gain 10 gold, but you can only do that once per game. And the cost to acquire the trinket is 0 gold. I already really like this. I think this is super cool. It is in 2 turns, so you'll notice that that's the turn right before your greater trinket. If it was on the greater trinket, it'd be really cool as well, because then you could afford your greater trinket and still have a turn. But getting it earlier is still better, right? I don't want to make it seem like, oh, it would be better if you got it on your greater trinket turn. Now, if you can get 10 gold, you would take that turn. You would take it the next turn, right? So that is better than in 2 turns. So earlier is better in this case. Why is it like that? Because it means that you can level earlier, which means you can spend your money then more efficiently on higher tier minions. So if you're going to get 10 gold, you would want that on turn 1 if you could, right? That is the most powerful turn to get an additional 10 gold. It would be turn 1. So I'm not gonna make it sound like, oh, it'd be better if you get it on a greater trinket turn. This looks really good to me. So again, I might be off here. we're definitely going to have some Trump 5-star or 0-star corridor creeper moments. But I don't mind, you know, taking some shots here. I think the, you know, I'll shoot my shot here and say that this is probably going to be really good. It costs 0 gold. It's really flexible. You can still do whatever you want, and you'll have a pretty big power spike turn, 2 turns from that, which means that it's going to be on turn 8, right? Because on turn 6, you get your lesser trinket. Turn 8, you get 10 extra gold. That means it's almost inevitable that you'll be on tier 5 on that turn. It's really hard to just spend 20 gold on tier 4. That's not productive. Which means that when the greater trinket rolls around, you'll pretty much always be on tier 5, which is a really good thing for me. I really like being on tier 5 when my greater trinket rolls around, because it's really hard to go to tier 5 on a greater trinket turn because you're spending a lot of gold on your greater trinket most of the time. So overall, there's just a lot of stuff about this trinket that just works for me. So I like it. Ornate Clock. Buy your greater trinket next turn instead of turn 9. Ooh, this one is much harder to call because it has trip vouchers 5 to it, where you get your greater trinket early. But the big difference is that when you play with trip vouchers, you have 2 greater trinkets. This one says buy your greater trinket next turn instead of turn 9, which I'm assuming there is no more greater trinkets on turn 9. So you're going to just play with 1 greater trinket and no lesser trinket. That is so difficult for me to call because that means that you'll have your greater trinket on turn 7. And there's probably some, I guess it really depends on which trinket you get, because there are going to be some greater trinket options that will allow you to snowball out of control. And if you get those and you're able to start working on those type of buffs or that kind of return from the trinket early, it's going to be really good. So what I'm assuming with this thing is that it's going to be very dependent on what you get offered. And if you get a certain trinket that is way more powerful, if you have extra time to build it up, it's going to be worth it. My initial feeling here is that there's going to be a little bit more of a hit or miss type trinket, where you're either really happy you get your greater trinket early, or you're just going to be sad that you have, you know, just a greater trinket and you don't have a lesser trinket on top of that. Selfless Portrait costs 1 gold. You get a selfless hero, and you get a selfless hero, and you get a selfless hero. Your selfless heroes also trigger on Battlecry. That means that when we play the selfless hero in the tavern phase, we should just get a permanent divine shield. I'm overall not too excited about this. I can see this being good for specific strategies, such as, say, the tavern spell buff strategy, because now you can put divine shields on your board. You might already have a selfless pair, and now you triple it, and when you play the golden selfless hero, I'm guessing we'll get 2 permanent divine shields, and then, you know, another 2 into combat. So probably really specific on what your board looks like, but to me, this, you know, I don't really get excited for this. There's likely going to be some specific strategies where you can use this, but as a general thing, it doesn't look that good to me. Sacrificial Altar. Remove all your minions, gain 3 gold for each removed. So it costs 2 gold, right? So if you have a board of 7 units, you'll get a net of, what is that, 19, right? So 19 extra gold. With 19 gold on turn 6, like you'd level for, say, 6 gold or something, right? It'll be like between 5 or 7 gold depending on when you leveled. So assuming you level for, let's say, 6 gold, that's 13 gold. You can maybe like buy 4 units with that. So you level, you buy 4 units. How good is that really when I think about it? And your board is empty, right? So because the problem I have with Sacrificial Altar is that you don't get to choose which ones you get to turn into money. The issue is that generally you'll have one big minion that you've been buffing, say a Lava Lurker or just something that you put a Tavern spell on and it's now bigger, and you have to remove that one as well. I think it's going to be pretty difficult to be super happy about it, simply because it seems like the majority of the money you're going to make from this, you're going to have to spend to scramble to get more tempo to make up for the fact that your board is now empty. So I like the concept. I think it's fun. It seems very memey. It's got a lot of meme potential, but are you really going to be able to recover on the board? My initial reaction here is no. I don't think you generally recover pretty well from this. Again, you know, all of these things we're going to have to see, because my opinion doesn't really matter much if I haven't really played with the cards. Of course, I still do my best to give you guys my early take on things, but, you know, experience is king in these matters. But my first reaction is probably not so good. Eclectic Shrine. Start of combat, give a friendly minion of each different type +2/+2, and then improve this permanently. So the improve permanently is either going to be 2/2 every time or 1/1, right? That's generally how it works. That's pretty important here. I'm going to assume it improves by 1/1. Again, we're going to have to see how that works. That's okay tempo. You can level on that turn. So let's say you have a spread of, let's be generous here. Let's say 5 minion types, 4 to 5. Right, let's say maybe 4 is a bit more realistic. You have 4 different minion types. You take the shrine, you level to tier 4, and now you get +8/+8 in the combat. There is nothing here that indicates that the combat buff is going to be permanent, right? It's a start of combat buff. So unless you have something like a Taragosa on the board, or you have the dragon, right, that makes adjacent buffs permanent. This does not really feel that good. It's not really going to give me extra money. It gives me some tempo, of course. But compare that to what Lightfang Portrait used to do. You got Lightfang Portrait early on tier 3. You got a Lightfang and you're making permanent buffs. This seems weak. Not that happy about this so far. Innkeeper's Hearth. Discover a minion of your tier. So that's almost always going to be a 3-drop, because most of the time when you're on the lesser trinket turn, you're going to be on tier 3. And you set the stats to 10/10. Most of the time when I'm looking at my lesser trinket turn, I'm thinking about, okay, it's 8 gold. I'm going to level to tier 4 on that turn, unless I have a very specific trinket or I have a very specific shop that interacts really favorably with my trinket. So this seems like a sort of a no-brainer where it's level on the same turn, because you're getting tempo off your trinkets. So if you can get a Divine Shield minion, you get a 10/10 Divine Shield minion on your board, and then you level to tier 4, that's already more tempo than, let's say, this Eclectic Shrine would give you immediately. But it's also permanent, as in you get the 10/10 on your board. Now the Shrine is also permanent, as in it'll keep buffing, so every time you're fighting, you will have that buff. But you do need to keep a spread of separate minions on your board. This seems also just like decent. You just get 10/10 on your board for tempo, you level, and then assume, you know, based on what's in your tier 4 shop, who did you just fight, did you win your fight, who are you fighting next, you could use this trinket to level to 4, level to 5, and hopefully your 10/10 carries a decent amount of tempo, and then you can start spending your gold on tier 5, and you can essentially pretend like, you know, this trinket is gone, because, you know, you get a 10/10 and that's going to be irrelevant pretty quickly. But it makes those 2 turns pretty clean, because you can level to tier 4, have a 10/10, probably win the fight, and then level to tier 5, have a 10/10, maybe avoid taking damage cap. You know, really depends on what the opponent is doing. So seems okay. You know, I don't get like super excited about this, but it seems reasonable. Heart of the Forest, we've already covered in the blog post video. +1/+1 on the tavern spells. We talked about this. It's okay if you're going to set up for that strategy. I think it's going to be pretty difficult to know on turn 6 whether you are already leaning into this or not. You're really gonna have to see what's in the shop. Do I already have some synergy with this or not? Probably I'm not gonna be too excited to pick this. Shrine of Evolution. Transform all your minions into random tier 3 minions. Oh man, okay, so I have 5 minions on my board, maybe? Again, right? The problem is that some of them are going to be buffed, and I lose my buffs because it doesn't preserve the stats, right? And it'd be bad if it preserves the stats, because then, you know, your random droplet or whatever, this is 3/3. At 3 gold, it's also going to be a little difficult to tier at the same time. It's possible, but most of the time you would have to go 3-on-3, and then what's the point of this? Because then my 3-drops are going to transform into 3-drops and lose their buffs. So my instinct here, again, is probably not great. I do think it's going to be a really fun one, and if you have a specific start where you just hit economy card after economy card after economy card, and somehow on, you know, turn 6, you actually have a board of 7 units, and it's just all, you know, shell collectors and droplets, and it's all just money, nothing is buffed. Yeah, go for it. You know, have some fun. Have a board full of 3-drops. That should be a lot of fun. It's also probably going to be dependent on which types are in, because if you're using something like Hearthstone Deck Tracker, you can open up the tier 3 category, have the drop-down menu, and see, okay, which 3-drops could I actually get? Because some 3-drops are going to be really good regardless of whether you played them, but others are going to, you know, have a battle cry effect, and they're not going to really be good to evolve into. You know, something like a Deflectobot is great to have on your board, but then you have something like a Reverber Drake, that's a 2/2, and now you're all of a sudden not very happy to have that. Probably type dependent, and I would only really like this if I had a really big economy start and a really wide board, not a lot of buffs, and just a lot of small, you know, tier 1, tier 2 minions. Explorer's Binoculars. Gets 2 random tier 4 minions. So I don't get to discover them, and this feels like a little bit like Elise, so I feel cheated in that I don't get the Elise hero power for 2 4-drops. Probably too strong if I get to choose. So I take this, I have to sell a random minion off my board, because most of the time in the trinket meta, you go to tier 3 on turn 4, which means that if you then want to level to tier 4 on turn 6, the level is going to cost 6. If you have 8 gold and you pay 3 gold for this thing, now all of a sudden you're 1 gold short to tier, but generally that's fine. You could just sell a 1-drop, or again, what we talked about, you might have a coin, right? You might have a shell collector coin or so in your hand. You might have a elemental on your board. So a lot of the time you can still tier with a 3-cost trinket. You get 2 random tier 4 minions. How good is that? I get 2 random tier 4 minions compared to, let's say, the one we saw earlier. For 2 gold, I get to discover a 3-drop and it's 10/10. That's pretty random again, right? It's so dependent on which 4-drops you're gonna get. I think I might prefer getting the 10/10 on the 3-drop and getting it at 1 gold discount. This feels a bit too random for me. It feels playable, it feels pickable, right? I get, 2 4-drops. We'll roll the dice, we'll see what we get, but probably going to be happier to be able to target it more. We have this one here, discover a minion of your tier, and then it's also a 10/10, and it costs me 1 gold less. Although the 1 gold less is made up for the fact that here you get 2 units and there you only get 1. But it's a 10/10, right? And you get to choose which one. Then we have the Horn of Summoning. Get 6 different tier 1 minions. Okay, so this gives you 3 gold effectively, and sometimes more if you have a favorable economy effect, such as the demon naga that makes a spell cheaper. That's worth more than 1 gold. That's probably going to be picked if you have tier 1 pairs. So if you have tier 1 pairs on your board, say 2 of them, this probably is a good pick because now you can pretty much always level because you'll have additional 1-drops that you don't need to keep, so you can just sell them to be able to tier. And now you can play your triple and get a 5-drop. So you have some economy, you get a 5-drop, it's okay. Probably not super I mean, it's going to be dependent on what's in the game, because the quality of 1-drops will vary. If we have some economy 1-drops, something like a Busker, right? Something like the Naga that gives you the spell discount, this becomes a lot better. So yeah, but likely gonna depend on whether you have tier 1 pairs or not. Marvelous Mushroom. So now we're getting into the 4-cost territory. 4-cost is generally rough to level at the same time. Once you take a 4-cost trinket, that probably means, okay, I'm staying on tier 3 this turn, which can work. There's some expensive trinkets that are great. Your tavern spells that give stats grant an additional 1 health. At the start of each turn, improve this. Okay, I like this more than the other one because this scales, right? So you can pick this early, and on the turn where you get this, your tavern spells are already +1 HP, and then at the start of the turn, you improve this. Next turn, you'll get 2 extra health. The issue is that it's going to be difficult to have a lot of return from this trinket early because you would have to be buying the buff tavern spells from the shop, and at this stage of the game a lot of the time you're still trying to fill your board, so you're not really buying a lot of the buff spells, especially after just paying 4 gold. I'm not leveling, so I'm maybe buying 1 unit from the shop, maybe a good spell, probably not, and then I have to level the next turn and buy a unit, and that's kind of my turn, and now I'm on tier 4. It's more a greedy trinket where you take it and then you don't really get a lot of return from it, but then later in the game, if you're starting to play into the tavern spell buff strategy, you get a lot of return from it. The issue with that is that you have to, commit early. You're not fully committed into tavern spell buffing, but you're going to feel bad if you're not doing it when your lesser trinket is essentially wasted. And it's difficult to know early on if you're going to be able to do that. That to me makes it a little tricky to really like this one, because I want my lesser trinket to give me a lot of flexibility, and this is sort of the opposite. It's going to cost a lot, so I'm not going to be able to level to tier 4, and it's going to really push me towards a certain direction, which means that if I don't roll tavern buff cards after that, I'm going to be sad. So I don't love this at first glance. I think you can have some really fun games with this where you just say, I'm going to pick the Marvelous Mushroom and I'm going to play tavern buff no matter what. God bless you, have some fun, roll it down, get some tavern spells. But generally for higher level gameplay, it's better to not decide on turn 6 what your entire game is going to look like. Now, trinkets do that to a lot of people, which is totally fine. You could just say, hey man, trinket decided my direction, I am rolling it down for this, and that can be fun, right? So, but generally at higher level, not the greatest approach to the game. Ooh, the Portable Factory, on the other hand, discover a tier 3 minion with a type, so it can be a neutral. At the start of each turn, get another copy of it. This is very different. So yeah, this also costs 4 gold, so reasonably likely that I'm going to stay on tier 3, but it's a guaranteed triple, right? I'm getting a tier 3 minion with a type, and then it says at the start of each turn, get another copy of it. So it doesn't say get another 3-drop or this or that. It says get a copy of it. So I am getting a second one of that tier 3. So let's map that out. Turn 6, my lesser trinket comes online. I pay 4 gold for this. I get a 3-drop on the board. I buy another card from the shop, and my turn, probably not losing, unless my opponent has something like the Hearth thing where they get a 10-10 on the board, because I stayed on tier 3, so I buy another minion from the shop, and I have a tier 3 for my trinket. Then I level next turn, I get another unit, I'm now on tier 4, and then the turn after that, I can just click the level button, because I'll have enough money to pay for it, and the triple will just materialize in my hand, and now I can discover a 6-drop. And that's clean. That's really clean, because now I've solved the problem of getting to tier 5 early, which we really like in trinket meta. We want to be tier 5 before our greater trinket pops, because it's really hard to level on the turn we get the greater trinket. And I get a 6-drop. I also have a tier 3 golden minion, which, you know, I don't know all the cards that are staying or not, so please forgive me if this example won't exist, but let's say you can discover Grace. Now you have +2 gold, right? You can just say +4 gold, +4 gold, +8 gold. That's a really relevant minion to golden, right? If you have a beneficial battle cry, or you just have a really solid tempo unit, that's not negligible. So you'll get some tempo from getting the extra units, you'll get the value potentially from the battle cry if it's a battle cry, and you'll get to discover a 6-drop. So this one looks really good to me. So it really reminds me of the reflective pendant, right? It's a bit of an expensive trinket, but it's a triple generator. Now I think pendant is still better because if you set it up properly, which is difficult to do because a lot of the time you have to sell certain cards off your board to make sure you don't copy them, you can copy the triple reward with it. So that is still really, really, really good, but it's already great because it's also super user friendly. You don't have to care about what's on your board. You know you're going to get the triple. So yeah, I like this. I think this is good. Okay, then the Rendell sticker is a bit tougher. You're paying 4 gold again, tougher to go to tier 4 on that turn. You steal the highest tier card from the tavern, and then at the end of turn, you steal it again. So on that turn, you're getting 2, let's say up to 2 3-drops. Maybe the tavern doesn't always have a 3-drop. It also says highest tier card, so it can steal spells. Spells, generally speaking, lower value than minions. Some of the exceptions, sometimes you have like a 4 or 5 gold spell that's really nice to steal. It's okay. The issue is that I'm getting economy, but I'm not able to level on the same turn, so that already sets me back a little bit. So on turn 6, I'm stealing a card, and then I buy another card. So similar tempo to what we just discussed, the portable factory, right? Let's say I get 2 3-drops on my board. Although this one isn't on my board yet, right? The second, no, that's not true. I steal 1 card, I buy a card, and then I steal another, right? So probably going to have a roll involved there, which is fine. We have gold for that. The turn after that, you level to tier 4, maybe roll to get a better steal a 4. It's okay. I don't think I get super, super excited about it, but I think it's an okay pick when you're just not too excited about the others, because you know you're going to get a steady stream of value here. Stealing the highest tier card makes it just far more likely you're going to be happy with the card you steal. So it's probably pickable if you have a strong start and you're able to support the slightly slower, greedier trinket. Then we have the returning trinkets. I'm not going to go in depth about these. Sorry if you've never played with trinkets before. I'm going to do my best to give you a little bit of feedback, but there's a lot of people who've already played with these and I don't want to make this a 5-hour video. So the model globe, at the start of every 2 turns, you get a 6-drop. That's okay. I would say really look at which minions are in the game, because some lobbies, I'll give you a very specific example of this meta. Silivas and Neon Agent are really good early 6-drops because they snowball economy. If Murlocs and Nagas are in, this trinket is very good. If Murlocs and Nagas are out, this trinket is not so good. So very dependent on which minions are in. You're looking for early economy snowball units, generally speaking. Bobblehead, this is actually a really funny trinket where this was so bad that they have to keep buffing it to the point where it now costs 0 gold. And they have to pay you to buy it. That's just funny to me. It's fine now. It's fine, right? You get 2 gold, but this used to cost gold, and then they made it cheaper, and then they made it 0, and now you get paid to buy it. This in particular was very good with demons because it just made it super likely, assuming you had a rewinder on your board. Let me say that, right? So that's the caveat. If you already had a rewinder on your board, it made it so likely that you would roll Percussionist and Malkazar, right? So, and that just gave you really, really good turns. I will say one thing. If you went 4 on 4, or let's say even 4 on 5, and then on turn 6, Bobblehead comes around, then it's good. Because now, all of a sudden, it's the 8 gold turn. So with Bobblehead, you'll have 10 gold. You'll be on tier 4, and you'll roll nothing but 3 and 4 drops. Solid. So that is the caveat. If you are very early on tier 4, this thing is actually quite good. Souvenir stand. This is the top 8 trinket. It's so much fun when it works, but you're so weak for a long time. I love taking it though, I really do. This means that you essentially don't have a lesser trinket for an additional 3 turns. If you want to make this work, make sure that you're strong. Don't take this when you are bleeding like crazy, when he's like, what can I win a fight? I guess I buy souvenir stand. It's like, you're not going to suddenly turn it around if you pick a souvenir stand. I would say that this is reserved for the people that had a good start and that are winning their fights. Innkeeper Stein, it's just a nice little bonus. When you roll, you get a higher tier minion. That's fine. Goldenizer, we know what that does. At the end of every 3 turns, you get a Goldenizer. Also a very greedy trinket. Don't take it if you are bleeding like crazy. Bartendotron is fine. It's one of those picks you take if you're just not super excited about the others. It makes upgrading cheaper. It means that you will definitely be on tier 5 by the time the greater trinket rolls around. So especially if it makes sense for your money, if you can have a very clean turn on the turn you take the Bartendotron, it's fine. Eye of Dalaran, super conditional on what's on your board. Most of the time it's not good. Whenever a friendly minion with no type dies, you get a random tyrant spell, so you need a lot of neutrals on the board. So then it's fine. Trip vouchers, slightly less greedy than the souvenir stand, but still pretty greedy. So I would say this has the same instructions as souvenir stand. Don't take this if you're losing like crazy, because you need something that helps you right now. Otherwise, you're going to be way too low health and, you know, you're going to die sometimes before you get your greater trinket. If you have a really sad trinket game, you can die before you get your greater trinket, and that feeling is awful. So again, only take this if you're doing well in the early game. Token of the Old Gods, solid. A fun pick. It's very flexible. You can do it in the shop. You can do it on things on your board. You can get a battle cry, play the battle cry, get the value, then evolve it. It's a discover effect. It's not random, so it's solid. It's just a nice card. Definitely like it if my gold makes sense for it. Book of Medivh, another solid one. Can't really go wrong with that. Tap spell every turn, costs 2 gold. You make that gold back in no time. Compass, one of the best trinkets, lesser trinkets in the game. This says get a random Naga. It's just the default. It'll be elemental or beast or whatever's on your board for the most part. It's solid. It's super, super solid. If you just want MMR and you don't really want to have to think about your trinkets too much, anytime a Compass is offered, just take the Compass, because it's free tempo. You get a minion on your board. It's free money. You can sell the minion later. A lot of the time there's synergy, right? If you're playing elementals, getting an extra elemental in your hand even later in the game is super useful. If you're playing Nagas, getting a Naga in your hand is super useful. So just, you know, it's like a S tier type lesser trinket. Goblin Wallet, similar instructions I would say as a souvenir stand. Don't take this when you're losing a lot, because it's gonna take a while before this starts paying off. Super fun if you can make it work. Definitely one of my favorite trinkets to take, but you can easily die if you take this in the wrong spot. Ticket a sticker. I'm not sure if the cost has been changed or if it's accurate, if I'm just misremembering. I thought it was a 5 gold. It's not a big deal. Like, we'll see on release. They had to change this one, and I'm gonna have to reach a little bit. I thought that the steal all minions from the shop, that was removed from the possible options. Very, very niche. A lot of these interactions you just have to know about, where it was in patch notes. Because this was super strong, where you would roll this and then you would steal the shop immediately, and you would, you know, easily make up for the gold invested, and you'd gain tempo, and then, you know, 3 turns later you could do something cool. Again, I'm not 100% sure on that, so please let me know in the comments if I'm just completely wrong about that, because that has happened in the past. But I know that there was a reason that Ticket a Sticker was really good, and then they changed it, and now I'm just like, I don't really want to take it. So I'm gonna stay with that opinion right now. They nerfed it, and now I was like, I don't really love it anymore. So the options just weren't good enough for me to be super happy about taking a sticker. Mystery Cube, on the other hand, my good, that is very good. If you've not played with it, you might not appreciate it so much, but there are a lot of lesser trinkets, like for instance, Ticket a Sticker, that you can roll that are really good to get for 1 turn, because some of them have the restriction that you have to wait a little while to get the value, or it's not consistent every turn. But when you roll it, you get the value. So if you get Mystery Cube, anytime you get something like a Spellcraft, it'll stay with you for 2 turns. So if you get Token of the Old Gods, you use the Spellcraft, and by the nature of it being a Spellcraft, it will come back in your hand at the start of next turn, even though you no longer have Token. So that's really good to know. Same thing with Quest Rewards. If you have the changing Quest Reward option and you get Golden Hammer, you can use Golden Hammer and it will come back to you next turn, even though you no longer have Golden Hammer. So all these little tips and tricks make something like Mystery Cube very powerful. So super fun to play with. You do have to be flexible. You need some game knowledge, and you need to, you know, make sure you make the right choice in the right spot. But on average, this is a really powerful and fun lesser trinket. Pendant, we talked about this already. It's very expensive. I would say it's not a super user-friendly trinket. You can easily lose the game with this, because what happens is when you get Pendant, you have to curate your board. You cannot keep a bunch of random minions and then say, well, I hope I copied a good one, right? Because that very often ends up in disaster, because now you've paid 5 gold and you get an extra droplet. Not good. So on the turn where you get the pendant, you will have to sell the stuff you don't want to copy. That's why it's a pretty high skill trinket. You need to know exactly what can you sell without dying. How greedy can you be? If you then make a triple and you triple into a 5-drop, do you sell the golden minion to copy the 5-drop 100%, or do you keep the golden minion and take the 50-50? So all these things make pendant a difficult trinket to play with, but very, very high potential. So if you want to do well in trinket meta, I would advise you to get good at playing pendant, because being able to pick this when it's offered is going to improve your win rate a lot, because it's a super powerful one where if you can set it up, you can just have these unethical boards where you have high tier minions, and a lot of them really early on, because you're just copying and copying and copying. But again, you need to strike this really good balance between how much can I sell off my board so that I don't copy the bad cards, versus if I sell too much, am I just going to be dead and I can't use my golden brand because I'll just be dead. Difficult trinket to play with, but super worth to learn it. Yogg every turn. What else can I say? It's cool, it's fun, it's not always worth it, and sometimes it's great. So I would advise you take this when it really makes sense on the gold. So it's an 8 gold turn, you take Yogg for 5, there is 1 unit you really want in the shop, then you see Yogg eat it and you say, damn it, Yogg, why did you eat that 1 unit I really wanted? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's Yogg. What else can I say? All right, and then we have some duo-specific trinkets. For the duos trinket, I enlisted the help of my good friend, Educated Collins. Him and Sapphire X are 2 of the best duo players I know, so make sure to check them out. If duos is your jam, Collins uploads daily YouTube videos, and these guys also stream a ton on Twitch, so make sure to give them a follow, check out their content. But Collins gave me some feedback on the duos trinket, because I don't play a lot of duos. Let's say if my content were split up, it'd probably be 99% solos, 1% duos. So yeah, I'm not super knowledgeable on these. But he told me that this is fine, right? Become a copy of your teammate's lesser trinket. It's a decent pick, because if you aren't happy with your options, you can just roll. And sometimes there's heavy synergy between the 2 trinkets, where if you get 2 of them, it's super good. So for instance, let's say the mystery cube was just revealed, not mystery cube, the one where you get a copy from the 3-drop. If you also get the copy of the 3-drop, you can then shift that to your teammates, and if you guys pick the same card, then now you can farm triples a lot easier. Of course, you have to get lucky, but that's just one example of something that could be super super beneficial. So it's just a flexible trinket that you can easily just not take if you're not happy with what your teammate was offered. So it just gives you a lot of options. Then we have Bottle Sticker. This one is very, very good. It gets way better when you have someone that you can talk to when you're playing. So if you're playing with a regular duo and you're on voice chat, it just opens up all kinds of cool plays where you can recycle battle cries, or back when you had something like Beatboxer in the game, there was a strategy where you would have a magnetic on your board and you have a huge stack of magnetics, so lots of Accordatrons. Attach that to the magnetic on the board. Now the Beatboxer gets all those Accordatrons. Portal it to your teammate. Your teammate might have a boxer, might not. If they have a boxer, they also magnetize it, send it back to you. If they don't, they just portal it back to you, and you put it on another magnetic, and boom, boom, boom. So this just has really so much flexibility, so many options. And at the very, very least, you could just portal stuff to your teammate that is useful for them, right? So at the very, very minimum, even if you're not doing any illegal game-breaking combos, it's just a lot of money where you can just portal stuff to your teammate. So common thread says pass a copy of the first card you buy each turn. So what that means is you get all the benefits that are on the card. It's already good because you can use this, let's say with Galacrons, where you can pass a high tier minion to your teammate, or you can even do something like Golden Touch in the shop, and then you give a golden minion to your teammate. Or you can put a lot of blood gems. If you have huge blood gems, you can put that in the shop and then pass a huge minion to your teammates. So there's lots of cool little things you can do with this one. For Summoning Sphere, Collins was not really too excited about this one. It's generally a little bit too expensive. When you get it, it's not that relevant. So it's generally better to pick a higher economy option. Let's say like, any of the others we just talked about, because that's going to allow you to snowball your board. Whereas Summoning Sphere is only something that becomes relevant later on. And because you didn't take something like Portal in the Bottle, your board's probably going to be weaker, and it's not really even going to be worth copying. So he said it's very, very niche case application. Generally, there's better options. Orchestra Portraits, pretty baity trinket. It's not good on average, but if you have very specific cases like your brand and you already, you have your brand unlocked, or your teammate has portal in a bottle and you can portal the orchestra back and forth, then it's okay. But in general, not worth picking. Then we have arrived at the greater trinkets. First up, we have Curator Sticker, get a Mishmash, and a 2/2 Amalgam with Venomous. Mishmash is the Curator Buddy. As a greater trinket, this feels not impactful enough. First glance, it is 1 gold, so it's super cheap, so maybe you take it in some cases, but I'm more thinking about this like, oh, I'm not in a good spot, let me just take the Curator Sticker and go scam, because if mechs are in, there's Curator synergy with Kangur. Kangur resummons mechs, and the Curator is everything, so now you can resummon Venomous minions. That's where my degenerate high MMR brain goes, where I'm like, oh, I'll just play scam with this, and they'll sell the Mishmash. Yeah, oh, it says get a Mishmash, and the Amalgam with Venomous. I guess that still means it's 2/2 Amalgam with Venomous, and the Mishmash doesn't have Venomous, right? If the Mishmash also have Venomous, I'm like, eh. Okay, we'll have to see. Yeah, I don't know. It feels a bit too slow to say, oh, I have a 2/2 Amalgam, and now on turn 9, I'm going to start buffing that Amalgam and make a huge Mishmash. Usually, when you play in the buddy meta, you start buffing it super early, and you have a good setup for it. You have something like Whelp Smugglers, and then you have some Giga buffs on the Amalgam, and you get huge Mishmash. Yeah, intuitively, I don't really see it working out. It feels a bit too late to start buffing a Mishmash at that time. Gold-plated Compass. It says make the next Naga you buy golden, but this is the same as the other Compass. It'll just be make the next whatever, right? So it'll probably look at all the types on your board, and then whichever is the dominant type, it'll say make your next beast you buy golden, make the next elemental you buy golden. So for 2 golds, if we have a good minion that we want to copy, we get that golden and we discover a 6-drop on top of that. I think that's going to be highly situational, and when it's good, it's great. So if you are looking for a very specific minion, or best case scenario, you already see the minion in your shop and you can play around that, it's going to be good. Also better in lobbies where the 6-drops are better, because you're getting a guaranteed 6-drop from the discovery. It's also cheap, so that helps a lot. You can have a big turn after that. Theodore Sticker. After you play a minion with no type, give a friendly minion of each type 5/5. Man. Theodore really got power crept, huh? So Theo was, I think back in my day, kids, we'd play a Theodore. It would buff 2/2 on 3 different minions, and we loved it. So this is 5/5 on all the minions of a type, so it's not restricted anymore to 3. That's crazy, and you don't need to keep the Theo on your board. And the sad thing is, I don't even know if it's gonna be that good. Because it really depends on how easy it is to cycle neutral minions. It's a huge buff though, right? You can buff 5 minions now. I mean, more than 5, but 5 is usually a good number because you need a flex slot, and you're probably gonna need to run a brand to get some economy or at least some kind of card. So I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I just don't know. I just think it's funny how much they had to buff Theo. So it just shows how much power creep there's been in the game so far. Which is fine. I think it's, it'd be boring if we would still be playing with 30/30 Deflecto bots in the end game, right? Ghastly Sticker, your end of turn effects trigger an extra time. That seems like a lot of fun. That's an extra Dokari. Super situational. If you have a good setup for it, this is going to be exactly the thing you're looking for. And if not, it's going to be useless. Wizard's Pipe. Whenever you cast a Tavern spell, give your minions with no type 6/6. See, that to me feels so much better than the Theodore buff, because casting Tavern spells is so much easier because you can generate them and they add value. So you have something like Overconfidence, you have something like the Careful Investment. Those things are so cheap to buy that, assuming you win your fight, you're making money. So it costs you nothing to buy those things, whereas cycling neutral cards is pretty much never free. So it's just it makes so much more sense to cycle spells. So this one I like. I can see the beautiful plan, right? Because now you could actually run the party guest with the Golden Titus. And sure, the party guest will not be a no type, but it'll still get buffed by the T sets. And now you suddenly have 6 T sets at the start of your turn. You just go like, brrr, all your no types get 6/6. So you can run Bran, you can run Titus, you throw in a Drakari for all we care. Yeah, this seems like a lot of fun. I will definitely have fun making some, we can't really call it menagerie, right? But I guess it's like neutral comp, right? So neutral comp with Wizard's Pipe. Seems like a lot of fun. Heart of the Forest, your Tavern spells, they give stats grant an extra 2/2. This I like more than the lesser one, because after round to greater trinkets, you have a much better idea what you're going to be playing that game. Much more time has transpired, you've seen more shops, you've already opened a triple or 2, so now you have more information about what you're going to be doing. So now if you have, say, a board of double humongous and you have a good setup for the Tavern spell stuff, now you can probably pick this. Innkeeper's Hearth, discover a tier 6 and set it to 2020. So you get a 6. The stats are not that relevant anymore. Turn 9, you're on tier 5, you get a 2020. It falls off pretty quickly. I'm actually having a bit of a harder time to rate this one. I think the lesser version is better, obviously, you know, relative to the turn, because the tempo you're gaining here, I think, is less relevant. So it's really about, I get a 6-drop, and is that worth a greater trinket? Probably not. My initial feeling here is that you're not getting enough bang for your buck here, and that the lesser one is more important to get. Lavish Cape, you cast a random tavern spell for each different friendly minion type. At the start of each turn, repeat it. You cast the tavern spell. That isn't that great, other than the synergy, right? But if you have synergy with casting tavern spells, it's going to be pretty important. So if you have Nala, it says you cast a tavern spell. So technically speaking, that should stack. But that would be great, right? If you run Nalas with this. I know that when they had another iteration of this type of trinket or effect, that maybe it was a quest, it didn't synergize with these buffers. But I think something got changed because the wording here is very specific, right? It says you cast. And I think if you're casting it and it's not Yogg is casting it or whatever it is, it should synergize with those things. So I think this is not a great trinket if you don't have the casting synergy like Nala or some of the spell buffing stuff. But if you have, this could be great. I think it's going to be a specific trinket where if you have the synergy, it's going to be nice. Portable Factory, the greater one. Discover a tier 5 minion with a type, and at the start of each turn, get another copy of it. See, this one feels a bit too slow now for me, because getting the one on tier 3 is nice, because now we can use that to triple, and we don't have to spend money and buying the units, and life is good. But now on turn 9, I'm going to get my first 5-drop. And on turn 10, I'm getting my second 5-drop. And then on turn 11, I make it golden. I could be dead on turn 11, right? So that's a long time to wait for the triple. So you're taking a huge chance here that the tier 5 minion you discover, that better be a really good minion to get more copies of. When we talk about the smaller Portable Factory, the lesser trinkets, you can kind of whiff on that, and it's okay because you're still just using it as a triple reward. Like, you cannot whiff on this one. This has to be a minion you're very happy with. And so you're taking quite a big chance here. So my intuition here is that I don't really like this one, similar to the Hearth one, where I think the lesser version's better. Like, when we're at this stage of the game is going to go very fast from this point. Some people are going to hit, they're going to have killer boards. So you cannot be going super slow at this stage. You have to get a board and you have to get it together quickly. Guiding Candle. This one, on the other hand, will get you a board really quickly. For 5 gold, you roll 1 time then, and you get a shop full of 6-drops, and then you can do it again the next roll. So your first 2 refreshes only contain tier 6 cards. I might be overvaluing this, but this seems like you're able to build a comp really quickly after getting this. You pay 5 gold for this, you'll have 10 base gold or more. If you play scenarios, for instance, you sell a card, you buy 2 6-drops, either freeze because it's good, or you roll 1 more time because you want to proc the other refresh. And then the turn after that, you'll have 10 gold to spend. You'll either have the last refresh frozen, because it says your first 2 refreshes each turn, right? So you can just do it again the next turn. Like, I mean, intuitively, that seems a bit much. It's just all 6s, because if you guys have played the Anomaly Elven Elite, those shops are bonkers, right? If you can only roll 6s, those shops are bonkers. So you get really good cards really quickly. So if you have that every turn and no one else has that, and you could just be on tier 5, like, there's not much reason to tier. You're going to have to spend all your money buying the 6s anyway. I don't know. Again, I might be overvaluing it, but this looks really good. Seems like you're going to be able to get a comp together really quickly. Oh, and here we have Empowerment Portrait. Get an Azurite Empowerment at the start of each turn, get another one. So that's not good unless you have a lot of spell buff synergy. Because, you know, I get 4/4, and at the start of turn, I get another 4/4. Get out of here. That's not worth 5 gold. Why would I want that? But if you have lots and lots of Tavern spell buffs, and, you know, you have the Humongous on your board, you get the good setup for it, this is perfect, right? Because it's a steady stream of probably the premier Tavern spell you're looking for, something that buffs your entire board, and the baseline is already 4/4. So, you know, maybe this is going to be like, you know, 20/20 every turn or something if you have sufficient buffs. I'm going to be honest, I have a tough time guessing how good the Tavern buff strategy is. I hope it's good because it's new. I want it to be good. All right, and then we have some returning trinkets, the greater ones this time. Same as the other lesser returning. I'm going to go through this a little bit more quickly. We have Bob's Tip Jar. Perfect to take if you're not happy with the others. This is really the, I didn't get anything broken, let's just get 4 gold and then 4 extra gold throughout the next turns, right? So it's like a reroll trinket, essentially. Faceless, very conditional, can be super good if you have this bonkers golden minion on your board and then copy it. Can be really powerful. Can be really just not worth it if you don't have a good setup for it. Compass, same as the other one. It's just good. So if you don't want to do too much thinking about your trinket selection and you have a good setup, right? You have, you already have decided your type, right? And it's the correct type for the compass. Just take it. It's solid. Peace Bloom. I like this one. It's a little bit tougher because you always have to remember, oh, like, should I buy this one? No, I don't want to waste my buff on this and that. But I've never really been sad about taking a Peace Bloom candle. It's not something that'll give you tons of direction, but it's nice if you're playing Nala, and we're going to get some of those tavern buff strategies, so it's an okay sort of universal trinket to take. Redeemer Portrait. Get Nala. Tavern spells cost 1 less, but not less than 1. I'm really sad that they removed the not less than 1. It was super fun to play with Redeemer Portrait. It was too strong. I completely agree, but it was really fun. Sometimes it's fine, you know, just have something really strong, but also have it be really fun. This is gonna be better in this meta than it was in the previous one, just because there's so much emphasis on Tavern spell synergy. So even if you're not going to be playing around Nala and you're just doing Tavern spell buffing, having your Tavern spells cost 1 less is still really nice. Probably going to be a decent trinket to take. And if you have a good setup for Nala, it's going to be a great trinket to take. Book of Medivh, same as a lesser version, solid. 2 Tavern spells per turn, you get 2 right when you take it, solid. Just a good trinket, can't really go wrong with that. Chess sets, very situational. You need to know how to use this. You need to have a good minion to copy, but if you have a strong minion to copy, this is super solid. Definitely worth the 5 gold. And it also goes to show how broken the previous versions were, because this used to copy the first 3 minions, believe it or not. So you would just have 3 really good minions and then get 3 more. And then they made it 2 minions and it was still broken. And now it's only the left minion. And believe it or not, in the right positions, it's still broken. So, you know, just copying a good unit, who could have known? That's pretty good. Fishing rod, very, very fun. One of my favorite souvenir stand picks. Take souvenir stand, hit turn 9, fishing rod, 2 7-drops. They both suck, you die. That's great. No, I mean, I love playing with this. It's a really fun one. So if you don't really know exactly what you're doing yet, also I would say check for pirates, check for Nagas. Sarjira, insanely good to get. Sanders, insanely good to get. So Pirate Naga make this thing a lot better. Anvil, incredibly situational. But when it's good, it's great. So if you have a neutral setup going and you can buff them with, say, blood gems or so, it's really nice. Also with the Tavern spell buffing, this could become a lot better because Humongous doesn't have a type. There's probably some other, you know, synergy cards that don't have a type, so you could probably make this work more often in the upcoming meta. So the Empowered Mirror, pretty much the same as before. It's okay if you want to just reroll your trinket selection, and especially if you see something good in your teammate selection, you can coordinate and have something with a lot of synergy. Magic Road Sign, super strong because you can do so many cool things with it. You can recycle powerful battle cries. If you have a teammate that has a golden brand, for instance, you can buy something like a rodeo and you can sell it, or even better, your teammate can play the powerful battle cry, then portal it to you, you play it, you sell it, it gets automatically passed. Very, very economic way to do that. But you could also do something like selling a golden card. And if you sell a golden card, it gets passed to your teammate. They can play it, discover another unit. So more difficult to get the most out of it, but has so much potential. Cho'Gall Sticker is whenever your team plays a golden minion, both you and your teammate get a triple reward. This is sort of more an all or nothing trinket, where if you have the right setup for it, you're going to pop off. It's a little bit like that quest reward, Pilfered Lambs. If you have a really good Pilfered Lambs game, you're going to triple, and then your triples are going to triple. And it's similar to that with Cho'Gall. Whenever you play a golden minion, you both get the triple reward, and then you both get the same minion. You could send it to your teammate. Your teammate now suddenly has the pair of the 6 drops, discovers another one. Oh, triple again, triple, 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 triple. So you need to have a good position where you can start tripling, but once the triple train starts, it's probably going to continue going. Move out box is super situational, so it's definitely not something you can take every time. But if you specifically are playing the strategy of support player and the player you're feeding, and the support player happens to get this, it's broken, because if you might not even have a full board, right? When you get this and you're just been feeding your, so let's say you're a Madame Goya and you've just been feeding your teammate all the good stuff and he's been carrying the fights. Oh, suddenly I have the cool board now too. So that is more than worth 10 gold. So super, super situational, but when it's good, it's bonkers. Then we've arrived at the new elemental cards. First up, we have Sand Swirler. It's a battle cry effect. Your elementals that give stats grant an additional +1 health this game. The battle cry interacts with Bran. It's a tier 3 and it's a 4/3, so that's not a great stat line. So you are losing a little bit of tempo for putting this on your board. But at the same time, if you already have, let's say, party elementals on your board, it can recoup the tempo. So it's really more a setup card. So we're going to see that there's some synergy here. We're going to go to the next card, which is Blazing Greasefire. At the end of your turn, give elementals in the tavern 3/2 this game. Now that looks fun. I cannot wait to get this on Zarek and then copy it, or to just go to tier 4 early and roll 2 of these guys. Oh, like Varden, and then just like it pops on this guy. Oh, that would be so good. Because that's, you know, that snowballs really quickly. I do want 2 of these, right? So I'll say like one is probably fine, but if you have 2 of these, now you're getting +6/+4 after 1 turn. That means that next turn you can already buy some elementals to stabilize. And now we get another 6/4, and it's end of turn, and it could scale with Drakari, so this could get out of hand pretty quickly. So yeah, big fan of this card. Then we have Glowing Cinder. Death Rattle, your elementals that give stats grant an additional 1 attack this game. So we saw the 3-drop gives the health. This one gives the attack. It's also a Death Rattle, so it's recyclable. It's going to proc every turn, and you can combine it with Titus. It's going to make the Blazing Greasefire buff even faster, because it's already a pretty good baseline amount, 3/2. This is where I talked about where, you know, Blizzard probably errs more on the side of let's make it slightly too strong in our estimation so that, you know, even if we're off, people are still going to be able to play it. And this might be way too good. I hope so. You know, it's a Nomi type effect, right? It's buff the shop. So seems good, right? If you have a little bit of buffs for it with the support cards here. We already talked about this in a previous video. So here are the support cards. By the end of the turn, give your minions 2/2. This will make that give an extra attack. This will give that an extra health. So now we have a way to scale this, so we can end up playing this. We definitely want Drakari for it, of course. It also says other minions, so it'll buff the Drakari, so we might even be able to run a Titus with the Cinder. The Titus should get the buffs from the Localar. It's, yeah, that seems like a very fun strategy. And we'll see that we also have Amplifying Lightspawn as a 6-drop. At the end of your turn, give your elementals that give stats. They get an extra +1/+1. It's just like the comp is building itself here. We want a golden Drakari, and then everything sort of falls into place. We run the Lightspawn. The Lightspawn gives 3/3. Probably if we position it before the Frost Forger, it'll first buff the effect, and then the Frost Forger will go off. So let's say you get that in the same turn. It'll buff 3/3 already, because first your spawn will go off +1/+1, then your Forger will go off 3/3 to the whole board. If you have Drakari, it'll be 4/4, right? Because you'll get 2 from the spawn. So yeah, it seems like a very fun comp to play if you have the Drakari. And then the other 6-drop is Unleashed Mana Surge. After you play an elemental, give 3 random friendly elementals other than it +1/+1. Other than it is pretty important, because it really sucks when you play a unit and then it buffs itself. And there's other examples like that in the game where it used to be like that, and it's really annoying. So it's good that we, like Ragnaros, for instance, you play a card, Ragnaros buffs it. So this seems to be the other strategy that is being promoted, where here we have the end of turn buffing, a little bit more passive, right? You're just trying to generate more end of turn procs. This one is more the cycle oriented one, where you still want to improve the effect of the mana surge, right? So it's still nice to have the light spawn. It's still nice to play the Cinder, get the Swirler, but this is much more of a brand centric comp instead of Drakari, where you're really trying to cycle as many cards as possible and then just give a lot of buffs like that. So a little bit more like Ascendant, if you will. A little bit more in the style of that. Then we have some returning cards. Dune Dweller, we can see that. Mage Color, Elementals, Blue. Battlecry, give Elementals in the Tavern 1/1 this game. We know that, that's reasonable, right? That's a decent 1-drop. Molten Rock, same deal here. All played with this card for a very long time. Party Elemental, same deal here. +2/+1. It's pretty nice where you have these cards that affect the buffs that Elementals do. A silly Molten Rock can actually gain quite a bit of HP when you have a lot of the other buffs stacked, where let's say you've been playing with Lightspawn and you've been buffing, and you have this random Molten Rock on your board. Every time you play an Ellie, it just gets a ton of stats. So I wonder if that's actually good enough to have on the board where you have Golden Party Elemental. Oh, right, there's some rewording here. Give Elementals in the Tavern 1/1 twice. That is very important, because if it's just 1/1 or 2/2, you only get the additional buffs once. But if it says 1/1 twice, and let's say you've been buffed up to 5/5, now you get 10/10, right? You get the 5 and then the 5 again. So that is actually pretty important. All the golden versions have been changed to apply twice. This is actually a very crucial difference. It's good that we double checked on that. Yeah, so get that twice, very very specific. Then we have Cyclone coming back. That's always a reasonable card to play. 5 damage Divine Shield, huge tempo, pretty solid 2-drop. Also just nice if we're gonna have a lot of elemental buffs. That's a good unit 2 buff. Then same thing here, Felemental doesn't give 2/2, but gives them twice. So same wording here. If we have a lot of elemental buffs, we're gonna double dip into that. Landlubber is coming back. As you can see, it's a mage rogue card. That's because elementals are mage, pirates are rogue, so they have the black border. So Alley Pirate, dual type. That's really cool. That looks fun. That looks nice. Then Meteorite Crasher, after you sell an elemental, gain 2/2 twice. So this will also benefit from it. And man, Meteorite Crasher, we can see that it's already a 4-drop because, yeah, we can see that being quite strong. If we have all these elemental buff strategies, especially given that with the other 6-drop, the Mana Surge, we're going to want to cycle a lot. If you already have a lot of amplifications, the Meteorite Crasher is going to grow so fast, so big. Wow. Now, it's an expensive composition to set up because you somehow need to have a lot of buffs on your elementals. And if we go back to Amplifying Lightspawn, Lightspawn is pretty expensive, right? That's a 6-drop that you need to have on your board, and preferably you'd need Rokari as well. And then you'd also need Mana Surge, which is another 6-drop. So that's a build you have to do if you have lots of money, if you're able to level early. It's not a cheap build at all. It's a lot of high tier minions. Now you can have Cinder getting some buffs. You can have a Swirler for some buffs too, but the fun one is the Lightspawn, right? Then again, it's easier to amplify the Swirler with Bran. So I can honestly see playing without the other 6-drop, where you just have, you know, if you have Golden Bran, you can make anything work. So if you have a Golden Bran and you play this, suddenly every time you play it, you get +3 health on everything, which means that every time you sell a unit, you're already getting +2, +5. That's only after playing one of those cards, and almost always you're gonna have more than just one effect. So that can stack up really, really quickly. So even without the steady flow of +1/+1 end of turn, you can probably get there if you're just cycling stuff with Bran, because you're going to generate random elementals anyway. Anomaly is going to tier 4. The effect is still the same. Battlecry, gain 2 refreshes that cost 0. I don't think if there's anything in the wording here that changes the stacking. So please, in the comments, double check me on that. That might be different. But right now, the change that they made to Anomaly is super fun, where before, if you would get the free rerolls, you would have to use them first, then play another one, use them, then play another one. Now you can just stack them, pile them on, and it's so much more user-friendly. It's so much more fun. You can just throw a bunch of anomalies on your board and say, the next 12 rolls are free. Whee! That's really fun to do. Going to tier 4, I can see that. There's a lot of elemental buffs going on. Then we have Barnstormer, also give elementals +2/+2 twice, so it will also double dip the tavern buffs. Technical Element is now a tier 5, which is understandable because it's going to be very easy to get a lot of tavern buffs. We saw that with the tier 4 units that buffs 3 to end of turn. Let's say you have 2 of those. If you can now magnetize a lot of stats, that's kind of crazy. We've also turned this into a 10/10 because why not? That seems like fun. It seems like you're really pushing that Nomi-esque type buffing where you can do a lot of shop buffs and then slam a huge magnetic. And then Behemoth has been nerfed quite a bit, which I can see, because right now, you know, if you're playing Anomaly meta, you can get tier 7 Anomaly, and you can get insane stats with Behemoth, because when it says double, you can just sell Behemoths on top of Behemoths. So the way to go infinite stats in that strategy is you make a big elemental, and then you sell it on top of a golden behemoth. Now you have twice the size of that elemental. Then you make another golden behemoth, usually with Sanders, and then you sell that, and now you have twice the stats of that golden behemoth, and so on and so on and so on. And we know that if you do times 2 times 2 times 2 a few times, you get a very large number. So same thing here in Battlegrounds. Anytime you have that type of scaling, it goes out of control really quickly. So I think that's good. Now it's you just get half the stats, and then if you have a golden one, you gain the stats. So it's a nice form of scaling, but it doesn't go out of control nearly as much as when it's just double. And here we have the removed elemental cards. The temperature shift spell is going, and it makes a whole lot of sense. Also, Fireball or Snowball are going. Obviously, we can't keep the spell in if they're out. This will just be crazy because there's all these little elemental buffs that you can do. The elementals are a board-wide buffs. They would benefit like crazy from the +1 attack, +1 health, stacking. So super, super powerful. And on top of that, you also just have the natural scaling that the ballers have. So yeah, it would be so strong to get a bunch of temperature shift spells. And we also have Nomi going. No, that does make sense. Nomi is really it's a bit of a meme card. It's a crowd favorite. But I feel like they just printed a better Nomi with the tier 4 end of turn scaler. It's just so much nicer because even though you could get more with Nomi, it costs you a lot of money. And a lot of your actions with Nomi are actions that you wouldn't have done normally, like playing this elemental, buying that, cycling that. It doesn't necessarily contribute to having a really good turn. Whereas if you have the passive end of turn scaling, you can use your gold to really roll for the things that matter, for the cards you want to triple, right? Get more economy, get the brand and all that. So I think that makes sense. Then Ixxdeee is out. Ixxdeee is really a super cool card for your end game. You can use the magnetic to make a permanent divine shield, so that does hurt. Elemental is out. We do have some improved shop buffing, but a lot of these cards going out, it's not necessarily because they'd be OP, although I think the baller spell, that is the reason. A lot of the time, cards just have to go to make space, otherwise you can't fit the new stuff. Primordium is out, Nether Construct is out, Ascendant is out. That makes total sense. We have 2 new tier 6 elementals. We need to make some space for those, so makes all of this make sense. Primordium is a card that I will be sad to see going because it really fits that high APM, play a lot of cards, and works really well with brand. Then we have the Trinkets, Elemental Portrait. So Elemental Trinkets now. This seems really good. Get a Elemental. At the start of each turn, get another. 0 gold. I spam Elementals. I have strategies where I want to spam Elementals already. And at the very least, at the very, very, very minimum, it's gold and triples because Elemental is a pretty unique card in that if you get 4 Elementals, you have 2 6-drops. Because you can, on turn 6, when you get your lesser trinket, it's super flexible because it costs 0. You get a elemental, you put it on your board. Next turn, you get another. The turn after that, you level to 5. You get your 3rd one. Then you play that, you get your 6-drop. And then the turn after that, you get another one, which you then sell. And when you sell your golden elemental, you get 2 droplets. You sell the other elemental, you get another droplet. Now suddenly you have another 6-drop. So that means over the course of 2 turns, you'll get, those 2 turns where you have your 3rd and your 4th elemental, you get to discover 6-drops. And then after that, the elementals are just bonus, where if you have any type of buff strategy going on, you just get to play free elementals. So again, I might be off on that, but that seems like a really fun, cool, flexible lesser trinket to take, especially if you have some party elementals on your board. Now you're already getting some tempo for playing the Sellies as well. Fountain Pen, your allies that give stats grant an extra +1/+1. That's okay, but you, again, right, this commits you a little earlier, so you need to have a good supporting board for this. So if you already have Molten Rock, if you already have Party Elemental, that definitely helps. And then you can take this into the later game, into the mid game, and have a little bit of a bonus. But I'd much rather have the Elementals, because with the Elementals, I can end up playing a completely different composition, and I'm still getting money and triples, so I'm pretty happy with that. Elemental Portrait reminds me of the other buff Elemental Portraits, the Fellbloods. This one is basically both, where now if elemental will also trigger on death rattle. So it'll be 1/1 when you play it, 1/1 when it dies, which means you can, you can golden that, you can taunt it, you can have a golden Titus next to it and go brrr, buff the shop. Very fun. So yeah, seems like a fun portrait to take. Windfall Portrait. Now this one's very... Like, whenever you see Blizzard already making a trinket very expensive, usually what that means, at least in my... I like to imagine that's how it works, where they did the playtesting and they're like, this thing is too strong, we should make it more expensive. And then they test it again, it's still too strong, we should make it more expensive. I was like, can we make it more expensive than a 6? I don't know. So generally, whenever I see like very expensive trinkets, I'm like, okay, this is probably pretty good. And I mean, getting a Windfall Tornado every turn is very good for economy, because the Elementals are nice, and I would say early on it's good to farm triples with that, but as the game progresses, this is actually going to be a very relevant effect, because you don't just get a tornado. The tornado gets +1/+1 for each minion you've sold this turn, and elementals love cycling stuff. So if you get the Windfall Portrait on turn 6, you're not really doing anything else that turn. You don't even get it that turn, you get it at the end of the turn, right? So on the turn where you get the Windfall, it's likely you sell 1 unit and you buy a card from the shop, and then you get a Windfall Tornado end of the turn. It'll be a 5/5. You'll level first, then you sell it. Hopefully you discover something like a Wildfire. The Wildfire gets +5/+5. you put the Windfall down, and then you probably want to sell something like 2 more units and buy a minion from the shop so that you have some more effect from the Windfall portrait, and then you get an extra +3/+3 on the next one. But the cool thing with this is that later in the game, you can just discover genies with this yourself, right? Or you could discover the 4-drop now that gives you free rerolls. That you could have that next to a brand. So Windfall is just a really good card to have later in the game, much better than Elemental. And the effect here is that you can get some sizable minions off this as well if you're selling a lot of cards. Now, the downside is that later in the game, if you get a random, even like a 40/40, which is, you know, that's a lot of minions you have to sell. If you get like a 40/40, that can't necessarily stay on the board, right? You're more cycling stuff. So the buff effect becomes less relevant, but getting a tornado is still really good. Even though it's very expensive, I will absolutely play around with this. It seems like it has a lot of potential. Then we have the returning or change. So same as with the others. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. You roll and you buff the shop. We know what that does. That's okay if you have some synergy for it, and otherwise, you know, not so much. Kodo leather pouch. I'm very sad when I take this, but sometimes you have to for tempo. Not much to say about it. Nomi sticker. Okay, well, we have some support for it. So if you have the right setup for it, again, fine. Otherwise, don't touch it. This one is actually pretty good because even if you're not going to play Giga Elementals, it's still really good for any type of APM setup where you can play an elemental. Like, you don't even have to be playing elementals to play elementals. You can play Bran again. You could play genies. You could play refreshings, you can play Sallies and stuff. That's quite easy to do, and then your tavern spells become cheaper. So good setup for something like Nala, where you can do a lot of cycling and play a lot of elementals that are effectively free anyway, and you get some nice bonus effect from that. You can quite easily sell the tornadoes and actually gain some tempo on the board. Later in the game, that's not as impactful, right? We talked about that. The buff portion of the portrait falls off. Early game, you're going to be, oh wow, I get 7/7 on my alley. That's actually like a lot of tempo. I like that. Later in the game, it's, you know, kind of whatever. So I can see this only being 1 gold, and it can still be good if you're playing a cycle composition and you want to get more stuff to sell. But I can see why it only costs 1 gold for the greater version. Fountain Pen is just the upgraded version, +2/+2. Again, if you have a setup for it, seems good. You get some extra value. Other than that, not really relevant. Recycling sticker. Wow, yeah. So this is essentially Wraith. After you play an elemental, your next refresh costs 1 less. I think this is really good. The difficulty here is that it's a trinket that if you don't use it properly, it's not going to give you enough value, which means you're not getting enough tempo, which means, you know, you might just go 8th or 7th or whatever. The reason why it's so nice is it can quite easily make you go infinite, which means essentially whenever we say infinite, it's time is now your limiting factor. It's not money anymore because you won't run out of gold. And if you have Bran and you could play something like Windfall, and then you play the Tornado, you sell it, you roll for free, you buy a Battle Cry, you buy a Elemental, you roll for free, you roll for free. Essentially, if you, mainly when you have Bran and you no longer have to pay for rerolls, you can just spend your money on Battle Cries. And very, very often that means that you won't run out of gold anymore. Now, Recycling Sticker doesn't necessarily make your board stronger on its own, so that's why I think this one is a little bit more high level, where more experienced players that have played a ton with Recycling Wraith are going to like this one and use it to then scale their board with other cards. Whereas if you're not as experienced with playing that high speed, high APM elemental strategy, this is going to feel very underwhelming. So I think it's great to get comfortable with this because it's a really good skill set to have to use the Wraith effect properly. Behemoth Portrait, get an Arcane Behemoth. Okay, so we did see that nerf, but you're still stacking all the stats. So if you've been playing the Nomi type strategy, or even if your first trinket was the Windfall Tornado trinket, you're now getting these big tornadoes, and I talked about how getting a random 40/40 is not that good because you have to sell it, but with Behemoth Portrait, if you have to sell it, you don't really mind. So some nice synergy there, right? Windfall as your first one, then Arcane Behemoth as your second portrait. Drukhari Portrait, that seems really good because we have seen how there is some really good Drukhari synergy for elementals, which is likely why it's in the elemental reveal. Also, it says mechs, so it's probably going to be a dual trinket where it's also going to be offered a lot when you have a mech board. Yeah, you get a Drukhari Enchanter, and the Drukhari is now considered an elemental and a mech. Seems really fun, seems really good. Then again, greater trinkets that are returning. You get Kodo Leather Pouch, very underwhelming. Maybe on Millhouse or something where you can spam a lot of cards, but generally this buff is not relevant enough in my experience. Big Nomi sticker, same as before. If you have the setup for it, sure, you can go into it. But it's generally too late to say, oh, I have no shop buffs. Let me just start shop buffing on turn 9 and start, you know, +4, +4, +4, +4. So good to do if you already had the tier 4 unit that is end of turn buffing, and then you can say, okay, Big Nomi will take it from here, and now, you know, I already have, let's say, 20/20 or 30/30 in the shop. Let me just build on that. Totally fine, that's good. But if you have 0/0 buffs in the shop, it's generally too slow. Surprise portrait. Get an elemental of surprise. More appear when you least expect them. This is such a troll trinket, but it's great. The reason why I say a troll trinket is I remember some videos that I made where I rolled a brand and then like the brand gets transformed into surprise. And I'm like, he just did that. It's a fun trinket. It's good. It's really good because you just get a lot of triples. And elementals are one of the best types to triple because, you know, you get gold. Even if you get golden, the reroll elemental, the anomaly. Sorry, I keep forgetting its name. That's a lot of value, right? You make golden genie, that's good. Even golden elemental can be okay because you sell it, you get a triple, you get 2 more, you could triple that one again. And then obviously you have your really solid hits, you can triple your 6 drops or your 5 drops. So it's just a really nice trinket to have. So if you're elementals, this is a very good pick. And then as the last one, we have Dalaran Cheese Wheel. Minions in the tavern have 2/2, upgrades every 4 times you refresh. Generally speaking, not that good, but if you have Malchezaar, lots of Malchezaars, it can really boost your shop buffing. So if you are in the shop buffing business and you have Malchezaar, this is a solid pick. But other than that, you know, pretty slow, kind of expensive. And with that, we've had our very last trinket for today. That was a lot of stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If there is anything I missed, any cool combo interaction that you've thought of, I am very curious about hearing it. So please let me know in the comments. And as mentioned in the blog post, there are many more reveal videos coming up. We'll have another one for you tomorrow on Friday, and then again on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then on Friday next week, we will have the early access event that will be live streamed on Twitch. So make sure to give me a follow there if you don't want to miss any of the action. It'll start at 6 p.m. my time. It'll be the perfect opportunity for you to see some of the cool combos in action ahead of everyone else that doesn't watch the events. So you can get some cool strategies ready to go before the patch goes live on the 29th. I'll see you guys in the next one.